Hey everybody, I'm Izzy. Welcome back to the shop. So today we're doing a simple table saw jig project that is very useful to have around the shop, especially if you don't have a joiner. In this case, you can use it to do straight edges along live edge or curved wood. But there's something else that's a little bit more unique about this. It's the most simple version I can imagine of doing this. And I'll show you why, and we'll talk about that more in the video to come. Don't go away. You're going to want to see this because there's something really cool we're going to talk about right here. So guys, this is cork rubber. This is a non-slip material that Andy Klein, if you're not familiar with his YouTube channel, I'll put a link in the description box below. He just came up with a really cool twin turbo or 2-speed vise. And he's using this material on his vise. And I got my hands on some of it and it was absolutely amazing. So we're gonna use this today on our table saw sled so we can clamp things down to it and it won't be slick. Now I've got a couple of great guys in the shop with me today. They're behind the camera right now. But after we get this done, we're gonna make like a little test setup and we're gonna have some fun with that. So stick around, you're not gonna wanna miss that, I promise. To get this party started, we're going to go ahead and glue the cork rubber to some Baltic birch, in this case 1/2-inch Baltic birch. And to do that, we're using a spray can contact adhesive. Now this is a professional version of it called 90 by 3M, works great. To apply this, we spray it on both the cork rubber and then we spray it on the Baltic birch and then we wait. Once the contact adhesive is dry to the touch, we carefully position the cork rubber on the Baltic birch and then use a J-Brock roller to roll it all out. Now in this case we want at least 25 pounds of pressure per square inch to make sure that the contact adhesive seals very well to each other. With the cork rubber secured to the Baltic birch, we're going to use the CNC to cut this out. Now I realize I said this jig is simple. It would be slightly more difficult if you had to router this out by hand, but that is very possible and not really all that hard. First you'll need to route out a channel for the head of the bolt that will sit in on the bottom side, and then a second channel all the way through so the bolt can poke through. Now that the CNC has done its job, we're going to clean it up using a laminate trim bit in our trim router. For those of you who don't know what a laminate bit is, it's the same kind of router bit that they use when they put lamination or Formica on countertops and then trim it out. Hard, just enough to get it to budge. Come on. Not hard. All right, go ahead, try it again. All right, now this one.
A little more work.
A little more? Okay, now this one.
I'm sliding.
And I'm holding that down by hand.
Yep, one-handed.
Awesome, thanks man.
Yep.
Andy Klein's cork rubber, best stuff ever.
No competition.
So what we need to do, obviously this isn't like a scientific thing. What I'm gonna end up doing, and I'll do it in another video, I'm gonna get like a 45-pound weight, putting on each one and do like a fish scale so we can see exactly the difference in the pressures. But I wanted you to like actually feel this, so because I've been bragging about this stuff for a while now. This is pretty legit, right?
It is, absolutely.
What?
It's easy to work.
All right, thanks James. James Linden Tool Company on Instagram, right? And Maker's Playground, Linden Tool Company, same thing?
Playground.
Okay. All right, and we also have Jason from Interactive Realm in the shop. It's Interactive Realm on Instagram and Maker's Playground, right?
Yep.
And YouTube.
And YouTube.
Right, you have some videos out. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do this. All right. I got to recover here. All right. I'm giving it some.
You ready?
I'm giving it some Izzy muscles.
All right.
Like that's a thing. Go. All right, that didn't. All right.
That was nothing. Come on now.
I will tell you, it's a little harder way out here. So I mean, there's some slight mechanical advantages between me being way over here and right here, but it's not enough that it should make that much of a difference.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. All right, go. All right, let's try that one again. I felt like I didn't.
Don't lift up. You're changing it.
You gotta slide right out. There you go. Okay. Okay. Let me back up so I'm like fair distance here. Okay, that's good. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would say probably 5 times.
5 times harder. This is why we need to have like the 45-pound weight and like a fish scale.
It's definitely more difficult.
Well, I didn't.
For sure.
I wasn't planning on doing this, but since you guys were here, I was like, let me show you guys the difference and why this stuff is so crazy cool. So after I got done showing off Andy's cork rubber to Jason and James, back to the build. So I'm not going to bore you with another CNC pass, but we cut out some clamps, or what will be clamps, on the CNC and glued them all together to make one big clamp out of all the little clamp parts. With all of our parts put together, it was time to add them all to the base. Now, off camera, I added a little slide that goes in the miter slide for the table saw and put the thing together. Now, you might be wondering what the heck those little holes are for at the end of the clamp. The answer is because it's pretty. So after everything's said and done, this is what I end up with. This is 1/2-inch Baltic birch, and then I've got Andy Klein's cork rubber on top, and then just some simple clamps. Now, in a lot of these systems, these tapering jigs, what you see in the past is you'll see 2 slots like this at each end, a board that goes in between it, and a large slot that runs down that board, so the clamps are movable up and down the board, and then this board moves in and out, so you can get to all the surface areas. Well, the advantage of this is, first of all, you don't have that big board laying there, and you can still clamp in all areas. Now, if you're doing a small board, you may have to move your clamps into one of these positions. That's probably the only real downside to this system. So I'm going to ask you to use your imagination. In this case, in the tapering jig, we're going to imagine this is the large board that goes along the length of it. In this case, it's much shorter than what it would be in actuality. Now, the problem I have with this kind of setup, even there's a slot that would go down here, and this bolt would move up and down the slot. But here's the thing. If you put on your clamp and you give it any significant amount of pressure, now mind you, most of these systems don't have the non-slip cork rubber that I'm using on this jig as well, and you start tightening this down. If you watch down here, so as I put pressure or I screw down my clamp tighter, what's going to happen is you can see this board lifting. And again, this board is shorter than what you would have on a typical jig. Granted, I am in the middle of that, where on a jig you might be closer to where the board is fastened down on the end for the taper or for just straight lining. But it takes very little pressure for me to screw this down and lift this way up. Now, the fundamental problem with that is you only get so much gripping power. Now, I had to get some effort in that to take that out of there, but imagine if that was a piece of maple that you were trying to taper or ripsaw and you got into a pinch or a knot. It's going to throw it right back at you. Now, some of you might be saying, well, if you have the back of the clamp on this board, it'll make a difference. And the truth of the matter is it doesn't. So as soon as I start getting some pressure on here, again, it starts lifting this up because now the fulcrum is here and this point on the back is right there. But some of the jigs actually do have where the clamp sits on this board. But the problem with that is it only gives you this little tiny area to create enough pressure, or from the fulcrum to create the hold down pressure that you want. And again, it's not a good design. So this design is flawed. Now, 2 things I want to mention right here. First of all, this board right here that doesn't have the slot in it, so it's still stronger than it would be if it had the slot in it. If the slot was in it, it would make it weaker, and it would obviously be a little bit longer to fit on a jig that's going to be 36 inches long, or roughly 36 inches long. And now most of the jigs I've seen commercially are made out of like a light density fiberboard with a melamine top on it, which makes it really flimsy. And a lot of times it's dangerous. If you're cutting a taper or you're straight lining and you happen to get into a blade pinch, there's really not enough pressure there, or there's likelihood it could be not enough pressure to hold that material in place if something happens, which is going to mean it's going to shoot it back at you. That's why I am very confident that the one we're going to talk about now, or the one we just made, is a far superior design to this. I hope this is making sense. If not, I will try to make it make sense in a minute. So with this setup, the bolt is right next to the material. That bolt is pulling up on both sides of the jig. Now that's giving it a lot of strength. It literally cannot pull up because the material and the bolt are clamping everything together. So you're clamping the jig itself together on the material. So you're going to get a lot more powerful grip as a hold down. Now adding Andy Klein's cork rubber, of course, makes it way better than it would be without it. This is a much safer and a much more powerful clamp than what you would get on the other system. Now, really the disadvantage to this is, let's say if you have a small piece that you want to do, you have to take this off, move the bolt down to one of these other slots. That's the disadvantage to this jig as opposed to something like that. Let's go ahead and run it through. So now we have a really nice straight edge. We know that it's very secure in the material, and that is really the advantage of this system. Now let's say I wanted to make a taper. Again, all I have to do is move my tapering section here. The tapering doesn't have to be on here. You could do a wider board if you wanted to. I just like leaving it on here for its convenience sake. And as this sits, I can already do 9-10 inch boards. So now again, the tapering jig is designed so you can move it down to this slot here if you want to, instead of having it here. In this case, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it right here. We're gonna put a taper on this board that I just cut, right there. So there's the magic of this particular jig. It's one flat panel, a couple of components. I like the fact that the handle can move pretty much anywhere you want to put it in any one of these slots. You can hold a lot of different size material in this. If you have a very big piece, you can put that in here, put these on the end, remove this taper so you can go all the way past it, so you can get a big one. You could put a crosscut sled on this, clamp things down to use as a crosscut sled. There's just a whole lot of options to this particular setup. And I think this is why I'm very fond of it. Now I am going to be producing these production wise and selling them through Klingspor. I'll talk about that later in upcoming videos. But I wanted to show you guys this, and I'd really be interested in your comments in the comment section below. And I mean, if you think the other jig is better, please, I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear your reasons why. And maybe there's something in here that I'm missing that you guys think I could add to this to make it even better than it already is. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this jig. Where do you see fail points on this? What do you think could be done to this to improve it? Or maybe you like the other old system better. I want to hear those in the comment section. Please let me know. That's how we get better at what we do, and that's how we make improvements to this woodworking thing that we all love so much. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification so you get notified when I actually put videos up, and we'll be talking to you all later.